Hello and welcome back to another edition of Cyclone InCYders. I'm your host, Ben Olson, joined at the desk with Michael Murrell and Mwirichia. And it's been a long time since we've seen you folks, 3 weeks. And I'll tell you what, Cyclone sports have been all over the place these past 3 weeks. We got a lot to recap for you. And we're going to jump right into it with men's basketball. You guys want to start back at the beginning, or you want to start with the big news today?
Start with the big news. Right?
So, a couple big things in Cyclone men's basketball today. First, I guess Jamie Pollard announced that Coach Prohm is going to receive a 3-year extension on his contract until the year 2025. After, of course, we'll get into how they won the Big 12 championship in March this year. So, what do you guys think of that extension? Do you think Prohm deserves that with the way his team played this season?
Yeah, I mean, Ben, we talked about being a good time to be a Cyclone, and it's also a good time to be an Iowa State Cyclone coach, right? You've seen Matt Campbell getting an extension, you saw Kevin Dresser getting an extension, and now you're seeing Coach Prohm. I mean, consistency and continuity is a big part of sports, and so with that, I'm perfectly okay with this. I'm okay with having him here until 2025, my man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a really good move just for Jamie Pollard. I think it's less just about how the team performed, but more just how, I mean, everyone knew last year, like, Prohm got a freebie last year, right? You know, that there's like 86% of the scoring all left. I mean, everyone looked at last year and was like, okay, this is a rebuilding year. It just had to be. There were so many seniors that left from that previous team. And so this was going to be the year. It was like, okay, now what can Prohm do? Like, these are all his guys now for the most part. This is going to be the first year, like, what can we really see? And he brought in a couple big transfers, and Jacobson and Shayok, they produced right away. You saw a ton of flashes from the freshmen. Halliburton and Tucker played outstanding. Conde had a few great games this year where you really like where he's trending. And so it's looking like Lindell's going to come back for another year, more and more that way, based on the year he had. And so I think when you look at that, you look at what he's doing, you're like, okay, he's building a program now, and that's where I think he gets that 3-year extension. It's just like, it's unlike previous years, like 2 years ago when they won a Big 12 championship. That team was all seniors, and none of them were his guys. This team, the core of this team, were guys that he brought in. A lot of them were freshmen, sophomores, people that he went out and recruited. That was the core of this team, and that team went and won a Big 12 title. Got a 6 seed in the tournament, was ranked throughout most of the season, ranked in the final AP pool. Granted, they lost that first round game, but overall, that's a successful season. A Big 12 title is nothing to scoff at.
Yeah, I agree. I think also this is a nice move by Jamie Pollard just to show some support to Prohm after these Alabama rumors were flying around. He's really good at that, catching on to stuff like this. And Prohm, looking at the big picture, is a great guy, great for this program. So I'm totally fine with this move. And, but there is a Cyclone who's splitting ways. Cam Lard has announced that he will be transferring from the team after this season, and so we're going to wish him the best of luck wherever he ends up. Obviously, had some troubles in the past. Les, are you okay with this move?
Yeah, for Cam, you reach a point as a young man, as an individual, at this age that you have to kind of realize and do what's best for you. And for Cam Lard, I think that as you sit back, you realize I have to do what's best for me. And so him going a different way, I think I'm perfectly okay with it. I had a conversation with him over social media, and I just wished him the best of luck, and he said, hey man, pleasure working with you. And I wish him the best. I personally think that this is the best move for him moving forward.
I agree. I think it's the move for both parties, best move for both parties. And I think both guys will actually end up being very successful in the long run. Just together, there was too much head knocking going on, and it really didn't work out.
And it's okay. It's okay to realize that. I think. I think it's good to realize that and to split ways right there before things get to. You don't want to extend that another year with any animosity.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
I think it's good for both parties, but I think it's unfortunate for Cyclone fans. I mean, Cam Lard was an exciting player to watch. He was incredibly talented. He showed flashes of all Big 12 type of potential. That was his ceiling. All Big 12 competing for awards. That was his ceiling, just from a talent and just a size perspective of what he brought as just a basketball player. But what he didn't gel with very well was just what Prohm was trying to build as a locker room. And just the type of culture he was trying to build. That didn't fit with who Cam Lard was. And you saw that there was a lot of back and forth throughout his freshman year, even and it really in the sophomore year, that month-long suspension, and then even when he came back from the suspension, Cam Lar was never a truly trusted guy in the rotation this year, and that was the big thing. If you as a coach don't trust the player, as a player, you got to put yourself in a situation where the coach is going to trust you to throw you out for 25, 30 minutes.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I also, want to add one thing. Of course, Nick Babb is graduating and moving on, and I think he really took Cam Lard under his wing this last year, and so maybe that kind of just felt natural for Cam to move on too. So you made a good point. It's going to be sad to see him go, but I think both parties will find success. Yeah. Speaking of success, we do have some success to talk about, guys. The Big 12 tournament, 3 fantastic days down in Kansas City. I was fortunate enough to go, and I can say it was 75% Cyclone fans, as usual, and the team didn't disappoint. We could touch all 3 games against Baylor. The great game against Kansas State, which I would argue was basically the Big 12 championship. And then, of course, the manhandling of Kansas, which we all love to see in the championship. Who impressed you most for the Cyclones down there in Kansas City?
I think 2 guys were huge coming into this. Lindell, of course, and Murrell. I think something that a lot of people don't understand about Murrell Shayok is, yes, he'll miss, but again, continuity and consistency. That's kind of my word going into this semester. Is Murrell? He'll just keep putting that shot up. He'll just keep putting that shot up. And a guy like Coach Prom, that's what you want. Yeah, he'll miss 3 in a row, but you know what? He'll make the 5th, 6th, and 7th. And in this tournament, the Big 12 tournament, that's what they needed to do. It didn't work out that well into the NCAA because, again, these games are so long. People don't understand how long these tournaments are. Guys are getting 1 day rest. Guys are getting 2 days of rest. And you're on the basketball court 4 days in a row. So guys that were huge, definitely Lindell coming off the bench, and Murrell Shayok, the senior, making an example. One of the highest leading Cyclones in Iowa State history. So those 2 guys were key for me.
Michael, who'd you like?
Yeah, for me, I thought it was Michael Jacobson. I thought he was just incredible. It's not going to show up in the box score either, what he brought to that team. He had good rebound numbers, but other than that, what Michael Jacobson brought to this team was something they were, that whole month of the season, that 3-week stretch where they lost 5 of 6, there was no leadership on that team. No. They had a couple seniors, but Nick Babb, he's more of a reserve guy. Murrell Shayok's new to the team, he's a transfer, and so, which Jacobson is too. But that wasn't really his team. He was graduating this year. Jacobson stepped in as a junior and was like, all right, we're better than this. I'm taking this team over. It's my team, and he just was a leader on the court. You saw that in those last couple games of regular season. Him and Taylor Horton-Tucker got in a couple of skirmishes at the end of the season. That was Jacobson. He was calling him out. He's trying to get more out of his teammates, and you saw that in the Big 12 tournament. And he did that by example. No one was playing harder than Jacobson. He had a couple huge rebounds in those games. Where he was getting him just on effort. Jacobson isn't the most athletic. He isn't the tallest guy in the court. He was just fighting hard on other players, and he was leading by example, which is what you want to see. It's not Linda Wigginton obviously had the numbers. Shayok put up all the points, but what Jacobson brought just was an effort as a leader to that team. I thought was honestly the real reason why they were able to win that, and I don't think his foul trouble in Ohio State was a separation for how not great they performed that game.
I think you both made really good points because I feel like Shayok was, of course, the leader as always, and his scoring in crunch time did prove to come through in the Big 12 tournament, which really helped us. And then, like you said, Jacobson's effort, and he was just all over the court. And then I'm going to throw in a third person, Tyrese Halliburton, really impressed me because he started out the season so great and then kind of got quiet at the end of Big 12 play, and then he just came out of his shell in those 3 days. I really thought his 3-point shot came back, even though he was one of the best shooters in the Big 12 all year. He was kind of a little scared to shoot it. His 3-point shot came back, and he was really active on defense. And I think between him and the way Jacobson played, that was the difference maker. This Iowa State team looked like that team we saw in Maui those 3 days in Kansas City. And they looked like they had the potential to go far. And so we're going to get into it again. Inconsistency came back to bite them. So the Cyclones were able to get a 6th seed in the NCAA tournament in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they played the 11 seed Ohio State Buckeyes out of the Big Ten. Unfortunately, they were upset 62-59 in the first round. I thought it was a pretty good draw, you guys. I liked the location, and I was fine with getting a 6 seed. Some people thought maybe they should have had a 5. Let's talk about the game, though. Of course, Iowa State was predicted to win. things really just didn't go their way. What do you think went wrong for the Cyclones, Michael?
Well, they couldn't make any shots. I mean, that's what it came down to. I mean, they hit, I think, 2 threes in the entire second half. I mean, they couldn't make any shots.
Yeah.
They couldn't buy a bucket. I think they scored 25 points in the first half. I mean, the defense was great. The defense was great the whole last 2 or 3 weeks of the season. The defense showed up. They played great defense. They just couldn't buy a bucket. They were even getting good looks. They just weren't making them. Yeah. And sometimes that's just how March goes. It doesn't make this an unsuccessful season. A Big 12 title is something to scoff at. Unless in the reality is, unless you win and you make to the Final Four, like we can celebrate Sweet 16s all day long. Unless you make the Final Four, no one really is going to remember it. As a tournament run at least, and at the end of the day, they didn't hit shots. That's how March goes. But it's disappointing for sure, because you definitely felt with that draw, that team, you had Houston next round, and if you could get past Houston, which a lot of people I think is a 3 seed, were like, hey, maybe that's a winnable game for Iowa State. Smaller team, doesn't play a lot of great teams. You can get the Sweet 16 where it's in Kansas City.
Right.
You're playing in Hilton South. You're looking at that draw like maybe we can make a run, but in the day, that's just how it goes. Sometimes you couldn't get a bucket. A couple unfortunate calls that towards the end of that game, and that's.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough season to look at, where you like to think about what could have been.
Yeah.
Les, I know that you're going to have a point you want to make about Ohio State. Some of their players going off.
Yeah, let me give you guys some numbers really quick on the Cyclones. Michael hit it right on the head when he says this is a big tournament, and you have to hit shots. I mentioned Mwirichia. He came through a little bit more, but let me talk a little bit about the rest of the team. Michael Jacobson played 17 minutes, guys.
Foul trouble.
Didn't have any points, right? He pulled a Cameron Lard and fouled and got 3 fouls in the first quarter, in the first half of the game. Okay, let's go on to Taylor Horton-Tucker. 15 minutes, 2 points. Tyrese, 4 points. Nick Babb, a senior, 4 points. George played a few minutes here and there, came up a little bit here defensively, got a board. Lindell played a big game, and Cameron Lard came in and played his role. Mm-hmm. But we talk about Iowa State as identifying themselves as a team that has a multiple scorers, right? Whoever's hot that night is getting the ball, right? Guys distribute the ball well. There was not a lot of good ball distribution here, and I could say the same thing. This game looked similar to the women's game last night in Hilton Coliseum, where threes weren't going. I mean, just to give you some numbers, Mwirichia 3 for 9. That's not falling. Taylor Horton-Tucker 0 for 3. Tyrese 0 for 2. Nick 0 for 3. I mean, again, Mike, you gotta hit shots. You said it right then and there. So that's really what it came to. And then rebounding the basketball. Those two guys on the other side of
Weston and Woods.
Weston, and then of course Keyshawn Woods. Those guys were just too much. You gotta box out and get rebounds and give yourself opportunities, because the more you let them get the offensive rebounds, the higher their shot percentage increases.
And I really think that's where Jacobson getting the foul trouble just really hurt Iowa State in this one. I mean, that was Jacobson's role, right? He was a rebounder, right? He had 30 rebounds in the Big 12, in 3 games in the Big 12 tournament. I mean, he was. Mm-hmm. That was his role in this team, and you also lost that with Solomon Young went down for an injury too at the beginning of the year. That was also a big thing Solomon Young did. The loss of rebounding, I think, really just hurt, and that was never Cameron Lard's strength as a big. No. If he had one weakness as a big, it was rebounding. So it was just a perfect storm.
You mentioned the rebounding and then also the officiating. I think the officiating was bad for both sides, but I mean, as Cyclone fans, it's tough to continue to complain about that. We could start a whole other show if we were going to do that.
We can't do it forever.
But you look at the rebounding and then Iowa State having an off shooting night. I think that almost comes down to more game plan for me. I was really disappointed in Iowa State's game plan, because even if they had shot better than they would have pulled this win out. I think they were that much better than Ohio State. But I felt like we needed to double in the post. Jacobson was a liability going against Wesson. He was just outsized. Yeah. And Ohio State played to that strength, and we weren't able to counter it. Why didn't we stretch them out to the three-point line with Jacobson and with Horton-Tucker? Of course, he couldn't get his shot going. Foul trouble was a part of that, but I was just really disappointed that we couldn't get any momentum going, which comes to the shooting, which I think rolls into part of the game plan, because Ohio State kept getting those sneaky and ones, or those buckets when they needed them, and Iowa State wasn't, and I think that was the difference.
And not being able to get into a shooting rhythm. Foul trouble plays a role in that.
Yep.
You know, if you are out on the court, it's really hard to get in a rhythm into the game. And that certainly plays a role. And it's also, remember, you look at those guys listed off that were, you know, didn't make any shots, you know, 2 points, 4 points.
Yeah.
Taylor Horton-Tucker, Tyrese Halliburton. You know what those guys also are? They're freshmen. Playing in March, playing big minutes
Big
for a
stage.
team. Iowa State was a team that was like, we're going to throw out a team that needs performance out of freshmen. And that's what happens sometimes when you throw freshmen out there in the big stage.
That's a good point. And, I mean, while we're talking about that, let's just go to one last point on men's basketball here. Horton-Tucker obviously putting some mock drafts and some NBA talk. And, of course, Wigginton went and tested the waters last year. Do you guys see either of those players leaving?
Wigginton, I don't think will. He had such a down year those first 3 months. I think it would be, for him, he's got to look at this. You know, now it's looking like he won't even get drafted. And if he does, it's going to be very end. I mean, his stock went down from after his freshman year. For him, you know, it'd be like trading a guy when he's off a down year. You're selling low.
Yeah.
You know, if Wigginton, you bet on yourself. You go out for another junior year, and then you ball out, and then you go prove that you still have it, because he showed flashes of it.
Yeah.
He just needs to go out and do it again. And the injury at the beginning of the year definitely affected that.
Yeah.
And I think he knows that. It's smarter for him to stay another year. Horton-Tucker, I think he's one of those guys that should stay. I think he's one of those guys that's a character thing. You know, does he want to stay and go another, develop more as a player? Because, you know, the reality is to Horton-Tucker, he's a really, really good player. He's not NBA ready yet.
Yeah.
That's not him. You know, he needs to work on a jump shot. He needs to develop. He's like one of those guys. He has the NBA potential, but he needs to be in college a couple years. He's not a Zion Williams. He's not an RJ Barrett where he could just go and play. I mean, look at, you know, not every guy is going to be a top pick and come right out. Ja Morant is going to be the number 2 pick of the draft this year, most likely. He's a sophomore. He came back another year. He developed more as a player. I think for both guys, it makes more sense for them to stay. But it's really going to be up to them on whether or not they do.
Right.
Stay in college, improve your game.
I like what you said. I agree. I think it would be a mistake if either of those guys leave. I think Horton-Tucker will go and test it out. I think he probably won't get an agent, but I bet he'll.
I mean, that I think actually for both of them would be smart.
Yeah.
I think for any guy who has NBA aspirations, to go and test and get feedback from NBA guys, don't sign an agent. I think that's just smart. If you think you have NBA potential, absolutely go. Hearing people out, then that's an opportunity for you to go and say, okay, I know I'm not a pick this year. What do you think I need to work on to go back to school so I can come back here next year where you want to spend a pick on me? That's, I think, valuable. I think that's worth it. But, yeah, I mean, I think they should both come back for their junior and sophomore seasons.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's just a good move that the NBA has.
Yeah.
So, tough end to a good men's Cyclone basketball season. And now we're looking over at the women's side, who also had a really great run at the Big 12 tournament, guys. They ended up finishing runner-up. They lost to Baylor in the Big 12 championship game, but they hung with them for 3 quarters. That was a really great championship game. I hope some of you viewers got to watch that. What did you think of the Cyclones' performance down in Oklahoma City?
I thought it was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, Coach Bill, they went into this, when you want to talk about game plan, their game plan to execute games on that bracket went according to plan, right?
That's a good point.
It was 1, 2, 3, let's get there, right? But here's what held them back. You just weren't tall enough. You didn't have the size, plain and simple, Benny. That's all I can say. When it came to you got out rebounded, and then again second chance opportunities. You shot the ball well, hung in there with them. I mean, they only won by 9 points, right? But again, the size makes a difference, and we've seen this team get a little bit bigger with the Christian Scotts, with the Meredith Burkhalls, right? Getting a little bit taller so they can really contend with the Texases, with the Baylors, with the TCUs, right? So I mean, Bridget Carlton, phenomenal play. Adriana, phenomenal play. Ashley Jones, all these girls were phenomenal. But if we can just get 1 or 2 more bigs, I think if we get another big next year that's on the floor and is effective, I think you see us in this Big 12 championship game again next year contending, Benny.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the big thing, what I thought was really interesting about this year, and we'll get into the tournament games and all that, and obviously we're going to talk about Bridget Carlton.
Mm-hmm.
What's really interesting about this year is Iowa State was undersized for most of the teams they played against all year. You know, their tallest bigs were Scott and Burkhall, and both of them I think are 6'3".
6'2", 6'3".
6'2", 6'3". They aren't very big. And what they did though was, Iowa State kind of took a page out of like that Golden State Warrior type of like NBA type of look, and like, okay, we aren't going to be able to beat you down low.
Right.
You know, Baylor, you're going to go and you're going to beat us, but we're going to hit so many more threes than you,
Yep.
and we're just going to shoot them as many as we can. We're going to shoot 20, 25, 30 threes in a game, and we're just going to, you're going to get all the twos all day long, but we're going to hit so many threes it's not going to matter. That was the whole play. You know, Kristen Scott you had your 5 out there being one of your best three-point shooters, you know, and a bunch of wings and guards out there just ready to shoot threes. I mean, Middleton, Wise, Jones, Scott, Carlton, all of them could shoot, you know, and so, I mean, that was it was so interesting to see that, to have a women's basketball team at the college level to just be that efficient from the three-point line was very impressive.
Yeah, I remember watching this team in a practice early in November and just being amazed at how well they were shooting the lights out in the empty Hilton gym. And I think that's a good point that you brought up, because that was a great summarization of the NCAA tournament that this team had. The women received a 3 seed, and they were able to host the first 2 rounds here in Ames, Iowa at Hilton Coliseum. Hopefully some of you guys got to got to go out and watch that. And so they first played 14 seed New Mexico State at Hilton, 97-61 final score. They looked terrific.
Ran them out the gym.
Yeah.
It's the team that Iowa State fans have been watching all year. You know? Played good defense and just was unstoppable on the offensive end.
That's right. They were ahead by 41 at one point, and there's really not a lot to say about that game. And then, of course, last night happens, and it was the polar opposite of what we saw on Saturday, folks. They played number 11 Missouri State, who upset number 6 DePaul on Saturday. Then they played on Monday night, and they defeated Iowa State 69-60. The Cyclone shot, I believe, 11% from three-point range.
Yeah, they made
we just
2
got done
all
talking
game.
about.
Yeah.
2 for 17 for the game. It was a really tough way to watch this team that we've become so fond of to go out. Bridget Carlton, of course, was fantastic again. She ended up 7 points shy of the Iowa State all-time.
I thought it was 20. It was 20 at the beginning of the game.
20 at the beginning of the game, or something like
7
that.
No, it was
points.
38 at the beginning of the game.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then
she scored 31,
Wow.
7 points high.
So, I mean, looking at that upset, guys, a 9-point game, Iowa State just couldn't hit shots, similar to the men. Is that their only problem? Did you see anything else you didn't like, Michael?
I mean, honestly,
I think it comes down to game plans again.
it comes
We
a
talked
little bit
about
down
it.
to game plan, but yeah, I mean, part of it's just hitting shots. I mean, they were missing shots that they'd hit all year
Oh
long.
my gosh.
You know, like some of it's,
Maddie Wise was
some-
0 for.
Yeah, some of it's game plans. Some of it, give credit to Missouri State, they played great. But some of it is just they didn't hit the shots they've been making all year.
Hamilton was adapted
All
from the rest
year,
of the
you know,
UNC
they could play that game 10 times. They could get the exact same shots that they had in that game. The game could play out exactly the same. They would shoot the exact same shots and probably win 9 of them because they probably would have made 8 threes instead of 2. But it just, the way that game went, they just couldn't. And no one besides Bridget Carlton and Iowa State could buy a bucket. I mean, she outscored the rest of her teammates by herself. I mean, it's a tough way to watch the rest of this team go out. But like outside of Burkall and Middleton, you know, all of them are going to be back, and they're going to be probably in the tournament again next year, probably at a similar seat. This team is not going anywhere. They have Ashley Jones and Madison Wise and Kristen Scott is a great core to keep building on. So this team's going to be fine for the future. They're going to keep building on that. I think it's just really hard as a fan to watch Bridget Carlton. I remember watching her freshman year, you know, here when I was a freshman, you know, calling some games for KURE, and she was special from the beginning. And to watch her go and put up the year that she did, I mean, just took this team, was like, I have never been to the NCAA tournament, I want to go. And just went, and not only went, but got a 3 seed so she could host 2 Big 12 tournament games, to go put the game she did in those 2 games.
Hard.
And then to get knocked out after putting up 31 points.
I know.
So it's hard to watch because no one can say that Bridget Carlton didn't show up. Bridget Carlton showed up.
If you watched the press conference after that game, it was extremely painful to watch. You can't help but just feel for those girls and for Coach Fennelly. He got super emotional, and you could just really see the love that he has for this team. But overall, I mean, besides how fantastic Carlton's career was, and this season, this team was really special. Almost tied the record for wins at Hilton with 18. Almost tied the season record for most wins in a season. And of course, she almost set the Cyclone all-time scoring record. So, Les, how do you think that this season will be remembered? And then also go ahead and talk about where do you think Bridget Carlton ranks in Cyclone lore?
Well, I'll tell you what I'll remember. I'll remember this season and this team is, I guess for me personally, being as the Iowa State women's basketball MC, it was a blast getting thousands of fans on their feet for this team that was spectacular. Almost won every single home game, right? Except from two season home games, except from Texas, I believe. But I think the most memorable thing about this team is just how they stuck together and how with Coach Bill and these gals saw games and they were so deep in adversity. For example, a game like Missouri State last night, when you could see them start pulling away, when it got as the game got later in the minutes, you could see gals lose their fatigue, right? You saw, and again, this is a long tournament. People don't understand. You have to win 6 games just to get to the finals of the NCAA tournament. So keeping that in mind, it's still a fairly young team. Only 3 seniors on this team. But I know that with the leadership of Coach Bill, Mike, you said it a lot. There's a lot to build around. Maddie, Ashley Jones is a freshman. Kristen Scott is a sophomore, right? Some bench players. You got Ines Nezwar on the bench, and some other guys, some other gals. Ray Johnson, Adriana Cambridge. Adriana's a senior, my bad. But there's so much to build on, and just a phenomenal season. And of course, Bridget Carlton, she's just the cherry on the top.
Yeah, and something I'll say, really quick, just the future, and then to address the question of where does Bridget Carlton rank, all time. Just looking towards the future, it's worth noting that Ashley Jones' this number are better than Bridget Carlton's numbers her freshman year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, she's the best recruit Iowa State's ever had, and she's putting up better numbers than what Carlton was doing as a freshman. That's something that's worth noting to be excited about for the future. And the reason that is because, to answer your second question, where does she rank in Cyclone? She's the greatest women's basketball player that's ever played at Iowa State.
Best I've seen.
Certainly in our generation.
Right,
certainly for our generation.
When you look at the numbers, to me, I don't even think it's close. I mean, she's up there in rebounds. She's up there in every category. She's up there in steals. Right. She played great defense.
And
scoring.
Season awards.
Yeah, she's the first ever Big 12 Player of the Year for Iowa State. She's second team All-American this year. She set the single season records for points, rebounds,
all Big 12
steals, blocks. I mean, she just.
Come on.
Bridget Carlton's the greatest women's basketball player to ever play at this university. I think it's just really disappointing that she only got to make one NCAA tournament run.
Right.
But it's worth. I think it's really important. Something that Bill Finley said in his press conference was this group of seniors put this program back where it's supposed to be. More specifically, Bridget Carlton put the Iowa State women's basketball program back where it's supposed to be. At the top of the Big 12, competing every year in the NCAA tournament, and she did that. That was her team. And I'm excited to see where she goes. She's probably going to be drafted in the WNBA this year.
Should be great.
So she's incredible.
Yeah, I think that you could hang number 21 in the rafters in Hilton tomorrow, and I don't think a single Cyclone fan would have a complaint about it.
It's hanging up right now.
I mean, this is kind of the way March goes, guys. It was a tough end to the basketball seasons, but that's March. It's unlucky sometimes. Sometimes you're lucky. You never know. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll talk some postseason wrestling and gymnastics. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Cyclone InCYders. Welcome back to Cyclone InCYders. We're going to jump in and talk some Cyclone wrestling now after a great season. Guys, they went down to the Big 12 championships, where as a team they finished second, only behind Oklahoma State, and had some really great individual performances highlighted by Chase Straw, winning the first Big 12 individual title at 157 pounds in quite a while for Iowa State. And then, of course, Sam Colbray and Willie Miklas ended up runner-ups. They lost their finals match. But still a great overall team performance. Les, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, congratulations to Chase. Chase is a guy who's faced some adversity over earlier in the season. Had a knee injury towards the middle of the season. Didn't really get to come back until towards the end of course, with the Big 12. But this is a guy that Coach Drescher just continues to talk about him being an example in the locker room, on the mat, and just overall. So congratulations to this team. What a statement they made by getting second in the Big 12.
Mm-hmm. And I had that Coach Dresser actually was awarded the NWCA National Coach of the Year. Michael, do you think he's had one of the most impressive coaching jobs as far as bringing a program along this season?
Yeah, not just this season. I mean, he came into Ames 2 years ago, and where he took that program 2 years ago, I mean, it wasn't just a program that was struggling. It was a program that had tons of locker room issues. The locker room was in complete disarray, and Coach Dresser came in. That locker room now is in great shape. Everyone is really bought into what Coach Dresser is telling them, and not only that, he brought Iowa State back from a team that wasn't ranked 2 years ago, wasn't competing anywhere near
Wasn't,
second
no.
to Big 12. I mean, that just was not the program they were 2 years ago. It's a program that the fans had expected them to be, but they weren't anymore. And right back there, flirting with top 10 rankings throughout the season, and put up a top, only behind Oklahoma State. And that's the type of recognition that gets you back into the door of those big recruits, because big wrestling, recruits, they know of the history of Iowa State, but they it's like, what have you done recently? Who's going to be coaching me to that next level?
Right.
And to see a guy take a program in 2 years from nothing to a top 10 program, that's something that's really, I think, exciting for the future of the program.
And I think also, since Coach Dresser's got those guys who want to play for him and they want to play for Iowa State, that's really just translated into success, and it resulted in 9 Cyclones this year qualifying for the NCAA championships. So they traveled out there last weekend. A lot of guys wrestled really hard. You saw a ton of fight out of this Cyclone team. 4 Cyclones ended up advancing to the final round of 12. Willie Miklas placed 6th, and then Jarrett Deegan at 149 pounds placed 7th. Those were Iowa State's 2 All-Americans this season. Les, is there anybody who you think had the most impressive season?
Probably I would say an Austin Gomez and actually Willie Miklas.
He fought a lot of adversity at the end of the
So
year.
much
Right.
adversity. His father passing away, him transferring from Missouri. I mean, that's just so much. Wrestling Missouri at the last home meet of the season on senior night. Of course, he got the win, but the team took a loss. But you know how many guys we sent to the NCAAs last year?
Yeah.
One guy,
Jarrett
Deegan. And for him to come back with some teammates, that says a lot. That speaks a lot of leadership about this team. That says, again, this team was not ranked 2 years ago. Iowa State was like 57th in the nation, and then going into this tournament, we have a lot of guys in there. Guys thought, well, this is a tough tournament, but overall, well done for the Cyclones. And does this mean that the Cyclones are on the rise? Michael, you touched up on it. When you're recruiting, people want to know, your recruits want to know where, they know the history and they know where you are, but they also want to know where you're going, right? Because they're going to commit. They're going to commit for a year, 2 years, up to 4 years. So it's important to say, it's important to put out the message like, this is where we're going. We're sending guys to the tournament. We're competing in the Big 12, and that's the message Coach Dresser is sending, and he has a nice group of guys to follow along with.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. You talked about this program is on the rise, and I think shows that Coach Dresser obviously was deserving of the award that he got this year, and I think hopefully that translates into Iowa State getting some wrestlers so they can continue to produce 9, 10 guys at the NCAA championships.
Exactly.
Speaking of a team on the rise, the Iowa State gymnastics team currently ranked number 22 as they're going to head into the NCAA regionals in Athens, Georgia. They most recently competed at the Big 12 championships, where they scored their highest score since 2014, a 195.95. Had a lot of routines at 9.8, 9.9, and so that's really important for this team. Coach Jay Ronayne was talking about how all year he's been waiting for this team to be able to hit 24 sets without those out of bounds, those mistakes. And he said he thought he felt like that competition at the Big 12 championship was the first time where he really saw that, and he really liked what he saw heading this team heading into the regionals. Les, who do you expect to compete really well at NCAA regionals?
I think for somebody who got to cover the Big 12s last year that were held here in Hilton Coliseum, Ben, I think that this team was off to a good start. They started a good start with the Big 12, right? Finish your conference matchup well. Now moving on into further competition, I'm looking at the Kelly Martins over here. I'm looking at Sophia Steinmeier. I'm looking at Grace Wolfork. I'm looking at Laura Barnes, and of course Sydney Converse, Cassandra Diaz. All these gals are so talented, and when they put it together, just like Coach Jay Ronayne said, and Coach Wilson continues to preach about it, guys, we have to be perfect. We have to be perfect. The tighter the season gets, right? And in gymnastics, it's about sticking your landing, and just us having a conversation with Courtney Horseman over the weekend, and she's just saying, these guys, it's all about sticking your landings. It's all about, doing the perfect routine, going up there with grace. Your smile matters when you stick your landing, how tall you put your hands up in the air. Those factors fall into play at a high level of competition. And so for this team, I think moving forward, I think they're ready, man. This is a young team, couple seniors on here, plenty room to improve.
And we've talked all year about how many freshmen that they have in the road. And, you know, being able to score their highest score in Iowa City in 9 years, highest score at the Big 12s in 5 years. Michael, what do you think that means for the future of this team? Is it going to continue to trend in the right direction?
Yeah, I think this is where it's just really exciting to be a Cyclone fan right now. Just that a lot of these programs are trending upward.
With freshmen.
Yeah, with freshmen. I mean, we talked about the men's basketball team and the women's basketball team, you know, having a ton of young, talented players that they're building around for the future that were the core of these teams that while they lost, their freshmen and sophomores that were playing huge roles, and they're just going to keep getting better. You know, and then we talk about the wrestling team, where this was a wrestling team that just couldn't, you know,
couldn't put it together.
That just wasn't good, and then in 2 years, completely turned around.
Right.
The program that has a great locker room now. It's back to a top 10 type of program in the nation, where Iowa State wrestling normally used to be every year.
Right.
And then you look at this women's gymnastics team. I mean, by all accounts, this was supposed to be a bad year for Iowa State women's gymnastics. This was a team that was supposed to be just bad because it was a team that graduated.
A lot of injuries.
Yes, a lot of injuries. Graduated 16 years. It was supposed to be a very young team, a team that was going to be a rebuilding year. They're probably going to put up a lot of low numbers, some high numbers, but a lot of low numbers just because of the fact that it was people that were developing. And instead, what you're seeing is this team is putting up some of the highest numbers Iowa State gymnastics has put up in years. And it's by all freshmen who, in 2-3 years, they just keep getting better. And so I think when you see that across the board, like we said that, I mean, this is why Jamie Pollard a couple weeks ago won Athletic Director of the Year.
Right.
I mean, this isn't just a single sport. Jamie Pollard has every program in the athletic department trending upward. And that is a huge deal that just is so rare in college athletics to have all of your programs doing well.
Mike, I keep saying it, man. It's a good time to be a Cyclone, man. It's a great time to be a Cyclone.
The excitement is there. Fans, be sure to follow your Iowa State gymnastics team next Friday as they compete in regionals. That's all we've got for your winter sports. The spring sports are going to start firing up here. We're going to be talking some softball and some golf. I mean, heading into the next episode. That's about all we've got for Cyclone Sports today.
I mean, that was a lot for break, man.
Thanks for sticking with us.
And a big shout out to Hakeem the Dream Butler and David Montgomery Pro Day today. Those guys were spectacular. Some NFL drafts got a chance to look at them, and
coming up in April, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing those guys play at the next level.
All right. This has been another episode of Cyclone InCYders, and as always, go Cyclones.